When Jewish people pray, they always face Jerusalem. So that if you're in America, in the west, you're going to face east. If you're in South Africa, in the south, you're going to face north, and so on. But the Talmud tells us something else quite interesting. It says, Harotze laha'ashir yatzpin, that a person who wants to become wealthy should incline himself a little bit towards the north. So yes, he should face Jerusalem, but he should turn his body a little bit northwards. Va'arotze lahachkim, and a person who wants to become wise, yadrim, should turn a little bit towards the south. Now, what is the meaning of that? And the Talmud says there's a way to remember it. The table in the temple was in the north. The menorah in the temple was in the south. The table represents wealth, the table of riches, the table of the monarchy. In fact, it represented Keter Malchut, the crown of royalty. So if you want wealth, turn in the direction of the table, which was in the north. But if you want wisdom, you should turn towards the direction of the menorah, which was in the south. The menorah represented Torah wisdom, and in particular, the wisdom of the oral law, because the Aron HaKodesh, the Holy Ark, which had the tablets of the Ten Commandments, and also the Sefer Torah that Moshe had written, that represented the written law. But the menorah represented the oral law, the light of the oral law. And therefore, if you want that wisdom, you should aim towards the south. So this is something a little bit difficult for us who live south of Israel. How exactly are we going to turn south when we have to pray northwards? Well, that, of course, is a technical problem. But what we see from that passage in the Talmud is that the menorah represents wisdom, Torah wisdom, imparting the wisdom of the oral law. And there are a number of very interesting ideas that we see from the menorah in this regard. One of them is discussed in the book of Bamidbar, where the Torah tells us that when they packed up the Mishkan, the portable tabernacle, and carried it, each and every important item of furniture had to be wrapped in a number of different wrappings. And the general rule is that the item was wrapped, then all of its accoutrements were put on top of that wrapping, and then there was another wrapping over those accessories and accoutrements. So, for example, there was the table was wrapped, then all of the accoutrements went on top of that wrapping, and then there was another wrapping, and the whole thing was put on a frame. So it was always the article of furniture wrapped and its accessories on top of that. Not so the menorah. The menorah was placed on a frame, and all of its accoutrements went together with it, and then the wrapping went over them. The menorah was together with its accoutrements. Why is this so? And one of our great commentators tells us something very beautiful. Because the menorah represents the study of Torah, the oral law, the teacher, the rabbi. And it's not correct that the rabbi should be separated from his students. When it comes to the table, that represents royalty. A king is a king, even though he has servants with him all of the time, but he is entitled to be aloof and separate from his subjects. And therefore there's the king, the table with its wrapping, separated from its accoutrements and accessories. Not so the menorah. The rabbi must be together with his students. There must be a strong bond between the two of them. And even though the students have to have a sense of awe for their rabbi, nevertheless, there has to be a friendship that exists between the two of them. Now, at the beginning of our parsha, we're told another very beautiful idea about the menorah. The Torah uses the expression, Behaalotcha et hanerot. Moshe, you must command your brother Aaron to light the menorah. Behaalotcha is the word that's used. Behaalotcha means to bring up the flame on the menorah. And it's a strange word. It should say he should light, behadlik. And some opinions in the Talmud explain that the word behaalotcha, which means to come up, implies that the menorah, you had to have a number of steps in front of the menorah, and the Kohen who was lighting the menorah would walk up that little ladder and then light the menorah. But Rashi tells us something very beautiful. What does it mean, Behaalotcha et hanerot? You must bring up the lights of the menorah. It means that when the Kohen who was lighting the menorah lit the menorah, he would take that little match and he would hold it onto the wick until the flame came up of itself, of its own accord, and then he would move his hand away. What is the meaning of this? And Rabbi Shimshon Raphael Hirsch tells us something most beautiful. And he says, what does this represent? It represents a teacher of Torah, a rabbi who is teaching. What must he do? He must impart his wisdom over to his students. But he gives over the flame, and as soon as the flame goes up of its own accord and can stand on its own 2 feet, he moves away. The purpose of a teacher of Torah is to make his student independent, not dependent on him for the rest of his life. In other words, the role of a rabbi, says Rabbi Hirsch in his commentary on Pirkei Avot, is to become, in fact, superfluous. Rabbis don't want to be those who own all of the wisdom. We're the wise ones. We're in charge. We know what the Torah says. And you, our congregation, are the ignorant ones, and we're going to keep you ignorant. Not at all, says Rabbi Hirsch. That's the idea behind the menorah. Yes, you must light your students, but you must light them to the extent that they can stand, that the flame will come up of its own accord, and then they can begin to light others. The purpose of Torah is that it belongs to everybody, not just those who teach Torah, not just the rabbis. There should even be learned laymen, and that's what we learn from the menorah. So next time you stand up to daven Amidah and you're going to face in your particular direction towards the land of Israel, remember, Yadrim, turn a little bit towards the south. Remember the fact that the menorah was in the south and that the menorah represents the light of Torah. Receive that light of Torah, take it into yourself, and become an independent learner and studier of the Torah. I wish you a Shabbat Shalom.